Hi friends, today let us discuss about the stimulus announced by various governments. Now there is a lot of debate and discussion on how much the stimulus should be. So in India we compare against the stimulus offered by various Western governments. So why is that certain governments are able to give a higher stimulus and certain governments are refraining from announcing a larger stimulus? So let's look at it from the historical point of view from the Western world in the last few centuries. So what happens with this stimulus? What happens when you issue a lot of currency notes? So let's just go back in time. So we start off with the Dutch Empire. So Dutch Empire was the first global empire, and the Dutch currency was the reserve currency. So Dutch had a lot of credits to them. They started the first joint stock company, that is the Dutch East India Company. Then there was a stock exchange that came in Amsterdam. So it was also a financial center. A lot of monetary transactions used to take place, and Amsterdam was the financial capital of the world. And as we all know, New York was New Amsterdam before. So the Dutch traded a lot. They explored a lot. The landmass increased. They had a lot of colonies. What led to the growth of Dutch? First, they had they fought a lot of war among the Europeans, among the neighboring European countries, which made them very competitive. And once they started exploring and they were able to colonize a lot of new geographical mass. They started trading, coupled with better education and technology. They became very rich, and the Dutch currency was used worldwide. But what happens is, once a country does well for a decent amount of time, a sort of complacency starts coming in. Then you indulge on luxurious goods and other things, and you become uncompetitive, and you don't realize what is happening. You tend to maintain your lifestyle, and and during the same time the other countries, they actually tend to catch up. So the Dutch were going on fine, but now they had rival European powers also gaining in strength, and British were the next power. So Dutch was able to control the global trade and commerce, and that was because of their navy. They had a very strong navy, but uh, they started spending more than their this started spending more than they can earn, and they neglected defense expenditure like naval expenditure. So British actually caught up with them, and there were a lot of economic actions by the Britishers against the Dutch. So one thing was, the British said that only the trade to Americas and Britain could only happen through British ships and not Dutch ships. So there was a war between England and Dutch, and this continued for some time. But the final Anglo-Dutch War, that is the Fourth Dutch War, Anglo-Dutch War, period from 1780 to 1784, led to the collapse of the Dutch Empire. I mean, uh, they just it also coincided with the demise of the Dutch East India Company. They had a lot of debts. They could not service their debts, and people actually lost confidence in their currency, and all the capital that was coming in so far moved out. And that was the story of collapse of Dutch Empire. And now, with the decline of the Dutch Empire, the Britishers took over, and soon London became the global financial center, and this continued. Like after this, we have peace for long period of time. Obviously, there were some small wars going on, but British also did the same thing. They colonized a lot of new places, and actually from period 1870 to 1900 they were at their peak. You had a lot of technological advancement, you had a lot of education, a lot of inventions were coming from there. You had the second industrial revolution. So all these factors led to the rise of the British Empire. But again, same thing, the complacency then starts setting in, and you become you become uncompetitive, and during this time other powers start catching up. And then Britain, and then suddenly you had the World War in 1914, and which went on till 1918, and then you had the Spanish flu. So that was a very bad time, and this was some and all the European countries had accumulated a lot of debt during to finance this war. And after a few years, you had the Second World War, and again it was very bad for the European countries, and especially Britain. So the colonies once which were very profitable, and which were very which was of great use to these to Britain, now suddenly became a huge liability. So in after the war in the 40 in 1947, so Britain started experiencing problems with their currency. So pound was used globally at that time. That was the reserve currency. Now in August 1947, just before Indian independence, there was a lot of problems with the pounds, and Britain had to spend a lot of money to defend the pound. And then and that's why, I mean, it started losing colonies one by one. And in 1949 they had a bigger devaluation. They had a 30% devaluation against the US dollar. And in the meanwhile, US, which was gaining in strength, and the post World War II also, US was becoming economically very strong, and Britain was anyway in long term decline. And 1960s and 67 again there was a devaluation, and that is it. And then it started losing its importance. And then we have the American empire. Like it did not have colonies like the Dutch or the British have, but again America, because of its military power, it had bases in various countries, and it had a very good economic performance over the last few decades, and maybe 100 years. Obviously there were problems. So US was now the sole power, and dollar became the reserve currency. Now that is the advantage of the reserve currency. So say India wants to trade with say Australia. So the the best and easiest way for both of us to trade is using US dollars, because that is the reserve currency, and it is used worldwide. Now this is the advantage that United States currently today has, and is able to give such a large stimulus. But again, as we have seen in the history, so you have the New World Order, then you have a peaceful time, wherein the economic wealth of the countries increase, and then you have these issues, and then you start accumulating debt. I think we might have entered that period with respect to United States. So 1930 onwards, United States has been on a very good trajectory, but now currently, as we all know, the debt has increased, and it's more than the GDP. So more and more accumulation of this debt will lead to problems. So we've learned it with the Dutch, British, and all the major empires have collapsed, and one of the reason has been debt. So probably that is one thing, even here in India we have to keep in mind. So there should be a balance, because I mean, printing currencies and increasing debt will have a bearing on the future. So it is so this is something we have to keep in mind, and we have to go in for a balance and see to it that we actually start growing and not binge too much on debt. Yeah, thanks.